Hello, welcome to another edition of Dan Really Likes Wine with Pick and Pay. And in my cellar, once again, still in lockdown, still not able to head out to my local Pick and Pay or jump online and order some wine. Such is the current nature of the world in which we live in South Africa. And so I was thinking to myself, well, I've still got a bit of wine to drink. I have a cellar. I'm a little luckier than most. And I'd like to share it with people. But I'd also like people to buy wine, except they can't, or at least they can't in South Africa. But they can buy South African wine if they're not living in South Africa. And there are some rather large markets for wine, which, as I repeatedly assert, is by combination of price and quality, the best value wine in the world. So I thought to myself, who do I know who is enormously influential, who sells lots and lots of South African wine? In fact, he sells almost as much South African wine as he drinks, which is a vast, vast amount, who I could rope in to try and encourage people living in the UK, South Africans and other, to nip down to his wine shop or get onto his website and help our South African wine estates and wine brands by getting some sales going out of London. And that meant a phone call to one person and one person only. It had to be after lunch because he doesn't really do much in the mornings. And so we are after lunch, South African time. And hello, Greg Sherwood.
Cheers. Hi, Dan. Nice to see you again.
Fabulous to see you, looking resplendently scarlet today.
Well, I'm just. I thought it would make good for the camera to wear my very proud London Welsh. Seeing we're nearing the build up to next season, which will start in July, and you'll be pleased to hear I've been booked to do some team building tastings for the first team there after their promotion. So very proud, and a great club with a great history with the Prince of Wales as its patron. So hopefully next season will be a little smoother. But great to be with you.
Prince of Wales as patron and Greg Sherwood as supporter-in-chief. But they would be your number 2 rugby team, because sitting atop of that pile is still very much the Springboks. For those people who don't know the Greg Sherwood story, just a very quick recap of who you are and how you plug into the global wine scene, Greg.
So I'm South African, born in Pretoria, but moved back to the UK after living on and off around the world, but moved back to the UK from South Africa in 2000 and started my Master of Wine here, primarily the reason for coming back, and in 2003, and finished in 2007 to become the 4th South African Master of Wine, and basically have carried on in the fine wine trade here and at the same company, Handford Wine, since 2004. So this is my 20th year at the company. I'm the senior wine buyer now, and it's been a great journey and a great experience, and more latterly getting back to roots and getting back to, in the last few years, selling more top-end South African fine wine. But we've always been a great champion of South African wine because it's a great passion of mine, and I know a lot of the people personally, and I love the wine. So it's just come naturally now. So South African wine is one of our specialities, along with a lot of other French fine wine, etc. But so I've been here 20 years, and I'm glad to say I'm not the last South African wine anymore. After 11 years, we've got the lovely Cassidy Dart in South Africa, who's now the 5th. So hopefully we can work out together to get the 6th from somewhere. Hope all those people studying hard during lockdown.
Plenty of time to get it done and to focus on South African wine, which, as you say, you do relentlessly. And you could do that simply because it's a passion, but you wouldn't be able to do it for that long if it wasn't making business sense as well. And that would suggest, given the amount of South African wine I know that you push out, that it is a space that is proving increasingly successful in the UK market.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the last few years, I was a little bit protective of the space because it's a lucrative one for me. We've taken years of development. We've got a great range, and we've got a lot of support from the wineries and the estates. But it's come to a point where now I'm sharing the love a bit, and I'm doing a lot more promotion amongst the broader fine wine trade in London. So we'll see some of the wines we're tasting today. I'll tell you a bit more about, but there's a lot more of the top end fine wine that I'm really pushing to the other merchants and the other buyers at the merchants, and really encouraging them to do offers for their private clients and for retail. So it's become kind of a bigger thing now than just about me or buying wine and selling wine. It's about bigging up the whole industry and bigging up our best wines. So that's very exciting. It's just come naturally, but I think, I owe it to the industry because I've done well from studying and working in this industry. So it's about giving a bit back to South Africans. And I know at this time, they certainly need it to help sell wine. So we're spreading the message far and wide now, certainly in the UK.
Well, good for you, Greg. You're a wonderful servant of an ambassador for the South African wine industry. And what it means is that South African wine, in the eyes of the broader consumer in London and by extension into England, is not just the bottle of two dancing giraffes Chardonnay they find for £2.50 underneath a packet of salt and vinegar in Waitrose, but there's actually some really, really good stuff out there. And the three bottles we're going to taste, I think it's important to make this clear, these are all bottles that you selected based on stuff that we both had in our cellars. So it had to be wine that not just looks nice to have, but you're actually selling all of this wine through your store, and this is wine people can access in the UK.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think one of the driving forces, 15, 20 years ago, which really made me kind of focus more on fine-tuning and increasing our fine wine range, was because of all the dancing giraffes and creeping koalas and all these things and all these critter wines from all over the world, which were really kind of, some countries offered slightly better quality, but they were all just in this kind of slightly pointless frame for me. And I said, but why aren't we focusing on our fine wines? And fine wine term is, it's a big term, but I always wanted to champion our best wines, our best producers, and our best regions. So that became actually a real driving force in the beginning. And now we have such a choice to choose from. I like to sell the wines which have great stories and great people, because great people tend to make fantastic wines. So, but we're spoiled for choice now. So even in these lockdown times, we were spoiled for choice.
You are spoiled for choice. We're living a little tougher here in South Africa, Greg. But let's look forward to what we may be able to drink, and let's crack on with the three of these. Now, let's start with the first one. And I need to point out two things. One, this is the Seven Flags Chardonnay from Paul Cluver, which is generally both Chardonnay and Pinot Noir magnificent. This is the Chardonnay. And the other, I think it's important for both of us to make clear, Greg, that neither of us would like to enhance the belief, the malicious rumor that Paul Cluver actually played the role of Niles in the Frasier series. Neither of us have ever said that, and we certainly wouldn't want you to spread across the internet that Paul Cluver and Niles from Frasier are almost identical.
I couldn't possibly comment on that.
Oh dear. Well, let's pour this out, and I'm going to ask you a similar question for all three as we start them, and just generally. Why this? Why this particular Chardonnay out of all the Chardonnays you can have? Why does this one crack the Greg Sherwood nod?
So I've been a big champion of quite a few varieties in South Africa, and for the whites, it's certainly Chenin Blanc, and it has to be Chardonnay. I think we can potentially make some of the best Chardonnays in the world, and there's a bunch of leading producers out there, of which Paul Cluver certainly is one of them. Right down from their basic estate Chardonnay, which is always fantastic and features really well, right up to their Seven Flags, which is one of Andries Burmaster's pride and joy. And certainly the 2017 great vintage really caught my eye, and we've bought a big chunk of it, and we've sat on it a little while, and now it's finally hitting the shelves and hitting our private clients. And it's such a fantastic wine from a great vintage. So I'm always looking for the top vintages from top producers, and Paul Cluver is one of the best, I think, and they've got some great vineyards and some great fruit coming in. So this is certainly the pinnacle for them, and great wine.
I love the fact that you said that you sit on it for a little while. Often it's the hurry to get wine out, and 2nd of January, you've got the first Sauvignon Blanc sitting on the shelves from that particular year. So you've given us a bit more time. It can only benefit from it. What are you getting? What's making this quite so majestic once it glides onto that famed palate of yours?
So for me, to kind of crack that kind of glass ceiling of Chardonnay, you've just got to have that intensity with restraint. You've got to have a mineral background, acid frame that's not too tart, and somewhere in between, a minerality of and the terroir that kind of is translated into the glass. And I think places in Elgin, certain places in Himmelenard, certain slopes in the Helderberg, there are people doing it. And I think for this wine, it captures this lovely lemony mineral, citrus peel, kind of lemon pastille, kind of a bit of rock candy. But there is a kind of dusty, gravelly kind of mineral tone. And obviously some of that could come from the bit of acid lift there. But it's got such lovely freshness and precision with intensity. So it's a real fine wine. It's got a wine that can age. It's got great potential for longevity. And very excitingly for me, it's done and made at 13% alcohol. So it'll never be blousy. It'll never be overblown. And it'll retain that kind of acid frame and kind of intensity, which is so important for top-end Chardonnay, as we know from drinking Great Burgundy.
If we're just drinking this in South Africa, it's right, well, which other Chardonnay should I drink? Slightly more competition from what's coming out of your store. Somebody walks in, says, right, I'd like to try this. What is it going to remind me of? For an international market, what sort of wine for you is competing with his Seven Flags Chardonnay?
So this is a kind of, 40 pounds this wine. So you're going to be competing against good village level Meursaults and Chassagne Montrachets and Puligny Montrachets, and you're going to be competing certainly with some good top end Californian wines. But this is exactly the style and the intensity and the kind of quality that you need to have. You just can't make bigger and more oakier wines. The times have moved on, and you need to have that precision and that finesse there, and because you're going to be compared with some of the best. And I think in its price category, I mean, it's a premium wine. It's that's not a everyday wine, but it is certainly a fantastic dinner party wine. And if you can put it in your cellar and keep it for a few years, it'll only get better. So it's a very exciting wine. And again, you've got to pick the greatest vintages, and certainly 17 it's got structure, power, and in that intensity. And it's not just about kind of basic pineapple, melony fruit. We need to move beyond that to the more intricate flavors if we want to kind of really get the recognition that our top wines deserve. And I think that's what the top people are doing through their vineyards and through their terroir, not in the winery.
All right. Well, a glowing endorsement for that Paul Cluver Chardonnay. If you're sitting in London, put that down on your list of things to buy. One case of 27 Paul Cluver Seven Flags Chardonnay. In fact, if you buy a case, Greg Sherwood will deliver it in his London Welsh Speedo to your front door at any time of the day. All right, a great wine. From a name that's pretty well known, we move to somebody, and this is going to sound slightly odd, somebody whose name isn't quite so well known, but you've almost certainly had her wine before, because although Erika Obermeyer is now under her own name, we would know her for her wine, certainly, Greg Sherwood, from Mr. Graham Beck.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, Erika's come into the shop, and I knew of her wines, obviously, first through the publicity, through Platter Guide, and through all her, I've lost count of how many 5 stars. Everything she makes seems to get 5 stars these days. She's made an incredible Cabernet 15, which we sell as well. We do a little bit of her Reserve Sauvignon Blanc, and this fantastic Syrah Grenache Cinsault blend, coming from 2016, a little bit slightly more difficult vintage, but for a person to win Newcomer of the Year from Platter and get 5 stars, I mean, that just says it all. She's very focused. She's a perfectionist, but she makes quite expressive wines with lovely depth of fruit and lovely balance. And this is, fantastic wine, which I heard a lot about, and then I tracked it down through a good friend of mine, Ben, from Vino SA Limited, and he's been bringing some down into the UK, which we've sourced some. So exciting to be retailing it.
It's also an important development, I think, for South African wine internationally, because once we got past those initial days of all South African wine should be 10 pence for a litre and served in a plastic bottle, and people started appreciating there was more to South African wine. From the red side in particular, it was often the Stellenbosch style of red that drove things. It was bigger, it was more broad-shouldered, it was definitely in a more Bordeaux sense, whereas this is a wine that's very different to what people might expect from a South African red blend. It's a lot softer, it's a lot more understated, and it's something that turns that perception on its head.
I think you're exactly right. I think a little bit of that has been achieved with using fantastic varieties like Grenache Noir and our lovely Cinsault blended with Syrah. So Syrah will give you big, beefy, savory reds. And I think it's just been tempered nicely and added that lovely finesse and elegance with that extra bit of Grenache Noir and Cinsault, which just kind of lightens it up, loosens it up, and just kind of raises the aromatics a bit more high-toned, and just gives it a lovely finesse. And the end result, and I'm drinking this from a lovely Zolto Bordeaux glass, which is just a little bit bigger. It just gives such lovely aromatics on the nose, perfume, violets, kind of rose petals. But then on the palate, there's this elegance, and it just glides across the palate. You can feel the concentration of weight and intensity of fruit, but it finishes with a restraint that you would almost find on a kind of Southern Rhone or a Northern Rhone, which I think is fantastic. And that's really, really hard to achieve in South Africa in our hot climate. And 16 was a hot, dry year, well into the drought years. And it's a fantastic effort from Erika. So she's really fine-tuned this. And she's really a true kind of rock star winemaker. She knows what she's doing. You pay for what you get. I think quality nowadays, my big thing was people need to be prepared to pay for the quality from South Africa, and certainly now they are, which is great. And there was a bit, once we got over that hesitancy in the beginning, which a lot of our kind of icons stepping up to the plate helped with. I think it's not a problem now. But if you're charging big money, you need to deliver with the quality, and this certainly does. So fantastic, and congratulations to Erika. And I'm sure I don't know how she can go from better to better, because she's already newcomer of the year and she's got all these 5-star platters. So let's hope she can stay at this very high level. It's fantastic.
Not so much a star in the rising as a star now firmly established, and adding to the breadth and diversity of the wine we have to showcase around the world, which adds to what you're able to show the world. As you are able, very proudly, to show our final wine for today. And it's been a while since I've been quite this excited about opening this bottle. The guy in question, the guy comes and hands this over to you. He looks like he could be one of the guys from Boerskoefontein. He's a very blue-collar type Afrikaans farmer. He's probably got the only phone left in the world you can play worm on. He's certainly not new school. Callie Louw, he's the winemaker, he's the vintner, he's the horticulturalist, he repairs the tractors, and he makes just this one wine, this Porseleinberg, and it really is, amongst our many amazing stories, Greg Sherwood, one of the most incredible in South African wine.
So I know, Dan, when we were selecting these wines, they all were coming in rather premium level, and we were on the phone and not visually, but I could sense your grimacing as I suggested these bottles. These are certainly premium wines in South Africa, and cost a bob or two, but certainly, boy, do they deliver, and that is so exciting. Callie, the wine is like him, salt of the earth, so authentic, so true to its place. And the 2016 we've got here, which is fantastic to compare with Erika's. Again, a warm, hot, dry vintage, but then it's warm, hot, and dry in the Swartland every year. And it's always great. I remember sitting on the kind of Mullineau farm at Roundstone, and they're pointing out the Paardeberg and the Porseleinberg, and you just see this little black kind of hill of I think it's the Renosterbos there, the burnt lands, which it looked like from a distance. And the Porseleinberg, it's just an outstanding terroir, and from day one producing incredible wines. So this is a wine, we're tasting the 16, which is maybe in the general parlance a very serious wine, but maybe slightly more accessible than the 15 was, a real blockbuster. And certainly in the UK, we've managed to get a lot of the serious merchants to offer the 17. The tasting I helped Neil Martin host, and we had to call in this bottle because he forgot to ask for it, so he could squeeze in one wine, and it scored 97 points, I think, tying up there with Samantha O'Keefe's Reserve 18 Syrah, which was also 97. So top of the tree, global benchmark kind of quality, some of the best you can get in South Africa, certainly, if not the best. And it has now a serious fine wine following, collector following, of people who love their Northern Rhones, love their Syrahs from all around the world, especially the Northern Rhone. And the kudos coming is totally deserved by Mark Kent, partner there, and Callie, the winemaker. So fantastic. They don't make wines to, just for popping the cork and drinking. They do make wines for aging. And that's such an admirable thing in this kind of commercial world where there's so much pressure just to make wines that people can drink immediately. So it's a real departure and has resonated with the collector community, the fine wine merchant community, and the brokers are picking it up now, offering it on release and recognizing it for the greatness that it is. So let's have a taste.
Oh, it's
I don't often see you speechless, Dan.
It's one of those wines I just really don't want to share with anybody. So the speechlessness comes with trying to explain to my wife how I've come out of cellar. No, darling, there's no wine. Oh, it is exquisite, isn't it?
Exceptional. So this is one of the handful of wines, certainly in South Africa, that has cracked the early fine wine nod from the broader merchant community, which is more the community of businesses dealing with less just walk-in trade, but more kind of managed clients, where you manage their cellars, you manage what you put in, you manage what you pull out for them to drink. And joining wines like this, certainly on whites, would be your Yevon Sadis and your Chris Alheights, obviously. On the reds and whites would be people like the Molinos and Emma de Compostela, Riveratas. I'm sure I'm forgetting lots of people, but those are the kind of wines that have certainly found a real resonance in the investment community here, because investment to me means you could maybe buy 2 cases or 3 cases or 10 cases, drink 5, and maybe in a few years' time sell a few. Whereas generally you wouldn't put that on that kind of label on a lot of wines from anywhere in the world. But certainly, if you had 2 cases, and amazingly, these still come in 12 packs, which is very old school. You could buy 2 cases, drink one over 10 years, and I'm sure in 10 years' time you would make a handsome profit on the other case. If that's investing in wine, well, so be it. But that's always the way fine wine has been in this country.
It's a cracking way to finish off. And you mentioned Mark Kent. He's, of course, Borkenhout's Cluver, and a lot of the grapes that don't make it into the Porseleinberg head down the way of the chocolate block and some of the other Borkenhout's Cluver fare. As we wrap up, as well as just catching up with you and sharing some of your extraordinary knowledge on wine, it's a real push to try and get some South African wine sold in London at the moment, at a time when our winemakers and wine producers are really feeling the pinch at home and abroad. If people do want to get some wine from you, Greg, sadly there isn't a Pick and Pay in London to send you to, so I have to send you to Greg instead. How do they find you? How do they order? How does it all work?
So I'm at Handford Wines. You can visit our website, which is handford.net, N-E-T, and or you can also visit our kind of more fine wine website, which is our limited company, which is the Holland Park Wine Company, which is full cases under bond if you want to keep them in storage and age them. And a lot of, obviously, these fine wines you might want to keep for a few years if you haven't got a cellar at home. So yeah, contact me, or they can email me and contact me, greg@handford.net, and I will certainly give them bespoke the Dan Nicol Wine Show treatment. And who knows, they may even get mates rates from you, Dan.
There we go. Mention Dan Really Likes Wine with a hashtag, and for every 12 bottles ordered, you'll get that limited edition London Welsh video highlights tape on VHS from last season, produced in Cardiff and sent over. Greg, travelling means we won't see each other in person for a while. It's always a great pleasure to get over to London to come and join one of your famous lunches down in South Ken. But until that does happen, keep selling wine and keep doing the absolutely fabulous job you do, celebrating our wine and sharing that gospel, because at the moment it all helps, and you in particular are a major source of support for the industry. So cheers and thank you.
Great, Sam. Thanks for your forum. It's great for the industry, and it's such an important thing you do as well. So giving us the voice to help sell these wines around the world. Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon. And I don't know about a game of golf, but certainly we'll drink some wine or drink some beer.
So there we go. The official South African wine ambassador to the UK, Europe, and the rest of the world. A mad London Welsh fan, but apart from that, he's a pretty good sort. And Handford Wines will sort you out with any of the wines you've had today, or another great selection of South African wines. Look out later this week for more live tastings, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 p.m. on the Dan Really Likes Wine Facebook page. And also coming out on Thursday, the next episode of the Sommelier series with Niederberg. It's proved enormously popular as we share some terrific stories of some of the great wine characters here in South Africa. I'll be back again next week with another very special wine guest. Until then, enjoy your wine if you haven't, and count down those minutes to getting to a new cellar if you don't. Take care and cheers.